The man shook his head. It wasn't your time. You're the key to ending all this fighting. You may not know it yet, but you have a role to play. The princess felt a spark of hope. Could it be true? Could she still save her kingdom? Could she still make a difference? She didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. She was alive, and she would fight to return home, no matter the cost. The princess stood in front of the man, her heart still racing. She didn't trust him, not yet, but there was something in his eyes, a kind of quiet strength that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely alone in this strange place. "I didn't want to hurt you," the man said, his voice steady. "I just didn't know what to do when I found you lying on the battlefield. You were covered in blood, barely breathing." The princess swallowed, trying to push away the memories of the battle. The sound of metal clashing, the screams of soldiers, the sharp pain in her chest. Everything had happened so fast. She remembered falling, her body giving way. And then, nothing. She couldn't let herself be weak. She had to focus. She had to figure out where she was and what to do next. "Where am I?" she asked again, her voice firmer this time. "Tell me, and I might believe you." The man hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell her. Finally, he spoke. "You're in a city far from the battlefield, a place that's not like the kingdom you know. It's a human city, and it's safe here, but it's not without its dangers." "A human city?" The princess raised an eyebrow. "I don't understand. Who are you? What do you want with me?" "I'm called Darren," the man said. "And I'm not your enemy. I'm part of a group of humans who believe in peace, not war. We don't want to fight. We just want to stop the destruction that's been happening. I know this might sound strange, but I think you and I can work together to end the war." The princess felt a flicker of hope. She had always believed that peace was possible, but now she wasn't sure who she could trust. Her kingdom was at war with the humans. They were the enemy. But this man, Darren, didn't seem like an enemy. He had saved her life. She studied him closely, trying to see if he was lying. His clothes were simple, but there was a calmness to him that made her believe he was telling the truth. He seemed sincere, but still, she had to be careful. "If you really want peace," she said slowly, "then why didn't you stop the war before it started? Why didn't you stop the fighting when it first began?" Darren looked away for a moment, as if he was ashamed. "We tried. We warned both sides, but no one would listen. The leaders wanted power, and they didn't care about the lives lost in the process. But I believe there's still a chance to stop it, and I think you're the key." The princess frowned. "Me? I'm just a princess. What can I do?" "You're more than just a princess," Darren said softly. "You're the symbol of hope for your people. They believe in you. And your father. He needs you. But the truth is, the war wasn't started by either side alone. There are other forces at work, forces that want the destruction of both your kingdom and mine." The princess felt a cold shiver run down her spine. What did he mean? Who were these other forces? "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What other forces?" Darren took a deep breath. "I know this is hard to believe, but there are people who want to control the world by keeping everyone at war. They don't care about your kingdom or mine. They only care about power. And they've been pulling the strings from the shadows, making sure the war keeps going." The princess felt a knot form in her stomach. She had heard rumors of shadowy figures, people who whispered in dark corners and made deals with both sides. But she had always thought they were just rumors. Now, it seemed like they were real. "I didn't know," the princess said softly, more to herself than to Darren. "I didn't know it was this bad." The princess's heart raced as the guard stormed into the room. She had only seconds to react. Darren pushed her toward the window, but before she could reach it, the sound of footsteps and shouting grew louder. "They found us," the princess shouted, panic rising in her chest. She could hear the guards getting closer, their footsteps echoing in the narrow hall. They were trapped. Darren's face was calm, but his eyes were filled with urgency. "We don't have time to fight. We need to get out, now." The princess didn't need any more convincing. She turned and followed him, running down the hallway as fast as she could. The air seemed to grow thicker, the tension almost unbearable. They needed to find an exit, but they didn't know how many guards were blocking their path. "We're almost there," Darren called, glancing back at her. "Just keep running." They reached a side door that led outside, but as the princess reached for the handle, a loud crash echoed behind them. A group of guards had spotted them again. "Go, go, go," Darren shouted. The princess didn't look back. She ran through the door and into the night, the cold air hitting her face. They were in the open now, but they still had to escape the city. The sounds of shouting and pursuit filled the night behind them. As they ran through the dark streets, the princess's thoughts raced. The letter, the evidence they had found, was so important. They couldn't afford to lose it. If they could get back to Maya and the others, they could show everyone the truth about the hidden enemy. "We need to lose them in the alleys," Darren said, pulling her toward a narrow passageway. "Stay close, and don't make any noise." The princess nodded, following Darren as they ducked into the alley. The sound of the guards' footsteps grew fainter, but they weren't safe yet. They had to keep moving, keep running. Minutes later, they emerged from the alley and found themselves at the edge of the city. The moonlight shone brightly, casting long shadows on the ground. The city was behind them, but there was still a long journey ahead. "We're almost there," Darren said, his voice steady. "Just a little further, and we'll be safe." They kept moving through the dark fields, the princess's heart still racing. They had to hurry. They had the proof now, but the enemy would stop at nothing to get it back. The princess's mind kept returning to the letter. It was from someone high up in the enemy's ranks, someone who had been pulling the strings behind the war. The letter had confirmed what Darren had suspected. The war was not a mistake. It had been planned, and now the princess had the key to stopping it. But what if the enemy was already preparing to strike back? What if they were already hunting them down? "We're here," Darren said, pulling her from her thoughts. They had reached a small safe house, hidden away from the city. It was a simple building, but it was secure. Inside, Maya and the others were waiting. The moment they entered, everyone turned to look at them, their faces filled with concern. "We made it," the princess said, breathing a sigh of relief. "And we have the evidence." Darren pulled out the letter, and Maya stepped forward, her eyes scanning it quickly. The room was silent as she read through the contents. Her face grew darker with each word. "This is worse than I thought," Maya said, her voice low. "The people behind this war, they're not just powerful. They're everywhere. They've been controlling both sides for years." The princess felt a cold chill. She had always thought the war was a matter of two kingdoms fighting for power. But now, it was clear, there was something much larger at work. Someone, perhaps more than one, had been manipulating everyone. "We need to expose them," the princess said, her voice filled with determination. "We need to show the world that the war was never our fault. If we can do that, maybe we can end it." Maya nodded. "We will, but we need to move carefully. The enemy will be hunting us now that they know we have the letter. We can't risk being caught." Darren looked at the princess. "We have to act fast. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. We can't let them stop us." The princess stood tall, her heart steady with resolve. She had come this far. She couldn't stop now. The people who had caused all this pain, they had to be stopped. The war had to end. "We'll do whatever it takes," she said. "We will bring peace." Darren nodded. "Most people don't. But now you know. And I think you can do something about it." The princess was silent for a long moment. She wanted to believe him, to trust that there was still hope. But how could she? Her kingdom was falling apart. Her father, The king was ready to give up. Everyone thought she was dead. And now she was in the hands of a stranger who claimed that she could end the war. She felt so lost, so small in this huge, unfamiliar world. But she couldn't let fear control her. She had always been strong, and if there was even a small chance to save her people, she had to take it. Finally, she looked at Darren and nodded. "All right," she said. "I'll help you. I'll do whatever it takes to stop the war." Darren smiled, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "We're not alone. We can find others who believe in peace. Together, we can end this madness." The princess took a deep breath, her heart still heavy with doubt, but also with a new sense of purpose. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she was ready to face it. She had to. Her kingdom depended on it. The princess walked alongside Darren through the strange city, still trying to understand everything that was happening. The buildings were tall and made of strange materials she had never seen before. The people moved quickly, wearing clothes that looked nothing like the soldiers' uniforms from her kingdom. The air smelled different too, filled with the scent of metal and something unfamiliar. It was all so new, so foreign. "Where are we going?" the princess asked, her voice full of curiosity, but also doubt. "And who else will help us?" "We're going to meet others," Darren replied. "Others who also want peace. People from different places, all who believe the war must end. Together, we can stop the fighting." The princess nodded but felt a sense of worry. Could these people really be trusted? How could she know they weren't just like the ones who had started the war? The leaders, the ones who cared only about power. But Darren's confidence gave her hope. He had saved her life, and he was determined to end the war. She had to trust him, at least for now. They walked through the city, past strange machines and vehicles that moved on their own. The princess had never seen anything like it. She had spent her life in the castle, surrounded by the familiar walls and fields of her kingdom. But this world was so different. It was hard to even imagine that these people had once been her enemies. Finally, they reached a large building in the center of the city. It was made of glass, and the walls seemed to glow with a soft light. Darren led the princess inside, where more people were waiting. They all looked up as the princess entered, their eyes filled with curiosity. Darren stepped forward. "This is the princess of the kingdom at war," he said, his voice strong. "She has come to help us stop the fighting. She wants peace." The room fell silent. The princess felt nervous under their gaze, but she stood tall. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was a leader. She had to be. A tall woman with dark hair stepped forward. She was older than Darren, but her eyes had the same look of determination. She looked the princess up and down before speaking. "You're the princess who died on the battlefield," she said. "Everyone believed you were lost." The princess nodded slowly. "I was. But I'm alive, and I need your help." The woman studied her for a moment longer, then glanced at Darren. He gave her a small nod. "We can trust her," he said. The woman stepped closer, extending her hand. "I'm Maya," she said. "I lead the group here. If you truly want to stop the war, then we will help. But we must move quickly. Time is running out." The princess took Maya's hand, feeling the spark of hope. She had never imagined that this would be the way her life would go. She had always thought she would be a princess, ruling over her people. But now, it seemed, her role had changed. She was not just a ruler. She was a fighter. She was going to fight for peace. "How do we stop him?" the princess asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "How do we expose someone who's hidden so well?" Lauren's eyes darkened. "It won't be easy, but we have to take away his power. If we can show the world who he really is, if we can prove his involvement in the war, we can end it. But we'll need more than just the letter. We'll need hard evidence, something that connects him directly to the war." Darren nodded. "We have to find him, confront him, and bring him to justice. If we can do that, we can stop the war for good." The princess felt a surge of determination. Lord Asher had been the one pulling the strings, causing so much pain and destruction. He had to be stopped. "We'll find him," the princess said, her voice filled with conviction. "We'll stop the war." The group spent the next few days gathering information, following leads, and tracking down anyone who might know where Lord Asher was hiding. The princess couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The enemy would stop at nothing to keep their secret hidden, and if they didn't act fast, Lord Asher would escape again. Finally, they received word. Lord Asher had been spotted at a secret meeting in a remote location, far from the city. It was their chance to confront him, to expose the truth and bring an end to the war. The princess, Darren, Maya, and their group set out immediately. The journey was long and dangerous, but they had no choice. They couldn't let Lord Asher slip away again. As they neared the meeting place, the tension was unbearable. The princess could feel her heart pounding in her chest, her hands trembling. They had the evidence, but they still didn't know what they were walking into. When they arrived at the meeting site, they found Lord Asher standing with several other men, his back to them. He was tall, dressed in dark, expensive clothing, his face hidden in the shadows. As he turned to face them, the princess's heart skipped a beat. Lord Asher's eyes were cold, calculating. He knew exactly who they were. "You've come to stop me," Lord Asher said, his voice smooth. "But it's too late. The war is already in motion. Nothing can stop it now." The princess stepped forward, her resolve stronger than ever. "You've been controlling both sides of this war for too long. It ends today." Lord Asher laughed softly. "You think you can stop me? You're nothing but pawns in a game you don't understand. I control everything." The princess didn't flinch. "Not anymore. We have the evidence. We'll expose you to the world." Lord Asher's smile faded. "You think it will be that easy. There's always more at stake than you realize." But the princess stood tall. This was it, the moment that would change everything. She wouldn't back down now. The war had to end. Lord Asher had to be stopped. And with that, the princess knew that no matter what came next, she had done all she could to fight for peace. The future of the kingdoms was now in her hands. The princess felt a cold chill in her spine. These people, these hidden enemies, were dangerous. But they couldn't keep hiding forever. If she could find the truth, her kingdom would finally have a chance at peace. "I'm ready," the princess said, her voice filled with determination. "We can't waste any more time." Maya and Darren exchanged a quick look. "Then let's go," Maya said, standing up. "We leave tonight." The group spent the day preparing. The princess was given new clothes, simple and unrecognizable from her royal attire. She had to blend in, to look like just another face in the crowd. The less attention they attracted, the better. As night fell, the group gathered in a quiet part of the city. The streets were empty, the air cool and still. It was the perfect time to move unnoticed. The princess joined the others, her heart pounding with both excitement and fear. "We're going to take separate paths," Darren said. "Keep your eyes open and stay in contact with the others. We need to gather information quickly and then meet back here." The princess nodded. Her role in this mission wasn't just to be the leader. She had to prove that she could act, that she could be part of the team. They needed her strength, her courage, and most importantly, her mind. The group set out into the darkened streets, moving silently through the shadows. The princess kept her eyes open for anything suspicious, trying to ignore the feeling that something was watching her. They reached a tall building at the edge of the city, a building that was said to house the hidden enemy's secret operations. The group split into smaller teams, each moving toward different parts of the building. The princess and Darren crept through the back entrance, careful not to make a sound. Inside, the air was thick with secrecy. The walls were bare, and there was a coldness that made the princess uneasy. They moved quickly through the hallways, following the map that Maya had given them. They had to find the right room, the right documents, the right piece of evidence to bring back. Suddenly, they heard footsteps. The princess froze, her heart racing. They couldn't be caught. If the enemy found them now, everything would be lost. Darren motioned for her to hide. They slipped into a dark corner, holding their breath as footsteps echoed in the hallway. A guard walked past, his eyes scanning the darkness. The princess could hear his breath, feel the tension in the air. He paused for a moment, as if sensing something wasn't right. The princess held her breath, hoping the guard would keep moving. After a long moment, he continued on his way, and the princess exhaled in relief. "That was close," Darren whispered. The princess nodded, her heart still pounding. They couldn't afford any more mistakes. They had to get in and out quickly. They reached a locked door at the end of the hallway. This was it. Behind this door was the room that held the answers they needed. Darren pulled out a small tool from his bag, working quickly to unlock the door. The princess stood watch, her mind focused on the task ahead. Finally, with a soft click, the door opened. Inside, they found stacks of papers, maps, and documents scattered across a large table. The princess's eyes scanned the papers, her mind racing as she searched for something, anything that would connect the hidden enemy to the war. Then her eyes fell on a single letter, sealed with a dark red wax. She picked it up carefully, breaking the seal and unfolding it. As she read, her heart sank. The letter contained orders from a shadowy figure, someone who was working behind the scenes to keep the war going. They wanted the kingdom and the human cities to continue fighting, to destroy everything in their path. The letter confirmed what Darren had said. The hidden enemy was real, and they had been pulling the strings all along. "This is it," the princess whispered. "This is the evidence we need." But as she looked up, she realized they weren't alone. The door to the room slammed open, and a group of guards rushed in. "Run," Darren shouted. "Thank you," the princess said softly. "I don't know if I can do this alone, but with your help, we can make a difference." Maya smiled. "You're not alone. We're all in this together." The princess looked around at the people in the room. They were all different ages, different backgrounds, different worlds. But they all had the same goal, to stop the war. For the first time in what felt like forever, the princess felt like there was a real chance of peace. "We need to act fast," Maya continued. "The war isn't just between your kingdom and the humans. There are other groups involved, groups that want to keep the war going. We have to stop them before they can destroy everything." Darren spoke up. "We've been gathering information. There's a group of powerful people who've been controlling both sides, making sure the fighting never ends. They want chaos. They want control." The princess's eyes widened. "Who are these people? What do they want?" Maya shook her head. "We don't know their full names or faces, but we know they're powerful. They have spies in every kingdom, in every army. They feed lies, make sure both sides stay at war. They'll stop at nothing to keep the fighting going." The princess felt a cold chill. This was worse than she had imagined. Not only was the war real, but it was being controlled by hidden hands. And those hands had the power to destroy everything. "We need to expose them," the princess said, her voice steady. "We need to show everyone the truth. This war was never meant to happen. It was all a lie." The room was silent as everyone looked at her. Maya stepped forward, her face serious. "You're right. If we can show the world that the war is being controlled by others, we might be able to stop it. But it won't be easy." The princess took a deep breath. She had no idea how they would do it, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't sit back and let this continue. She had to act. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's find these people. Let's stop the war." Darren and Maya exchanged looks. Then, slowly, Maya nodded. "Then we have work to do." And with that, the princess knew her journey had just begun. The war wasn't over. But there was a chance, a small chance, that she could end it. And she would fight for that chance with everything she had. The princess woke up early the next day, feeling the weight of everything she had to do. The city was still strange to her, but she had grown a little more used to the sights and sounds around her. The people in the city seemed busy, but there was a quiet tension in the air. They all knew the war was still raging, even if it felt far away from this place. The princess knew the next step was crucial. They had to find the hidden enemy and expose them before they could do any more damage. She couldn't help but feel the pressure. Her people needed her, and she had promised to bring peace. But how could they fight an enemy they couldn't even see? How could they defeat an enemy so powerful that they controlled the war from the shadows? "Today's the day," Maya said as she walked into the room. "We have a plan, but it won't be easy." The princess stood up, ready to face whatever came next. "What's the plan?" Maya sat down across from her and spread a map on the table. The princess leaned in, studying it carefully. The map showed the kingdom, the human cities, and several marked areas the group had been investigating. "We found a few locations where the hidden enemy might be hiding," Maya explained. "These places are all connected to the groups that have been feeding the war. They control the armies from behind the scenes. If we can get to them, we might be able to stop the war before it gets any worse." The princess nodded. "How do we get to these places without being noticed?" "These enemies must have guards, spies, and soldiers everywhere." "We'll have to move quietly," Darren spoke up from behind her. "We have a small group, but we know how to stay hidden. We've been planning for this moment. We'll move at night, when the enemy is least expecting it. The most important thing is to find the evidence we need to prove that they're behind the war." The princess looked at him, a feeling of hope rising in her chest. "What kind of evidence do we need?" "We need documents, communication, anything that ties them to the conflict. We also need to find out who's really in charge. Right now, we don't even know their names, but we're going to change that." The war had been going on for years, and the kingdom was losing hope. The princess, once loved and admired by everyone, was now believed to be dead. She had been the symbol of hope for her people, a leader who never gave up. But now, there was only sorrow and silence. The enemy forces were too strong, and the battlefield was filled with bodies. The princess was one of those bodies. At least, that's what everyone thought. The battle had been fierce. The princess fought as bravely as any warrior, but the odds were against her. She led her army with courage, her sword flashing in the sunlight as she cut through the enemy lines. But in the end, it wasn't enough. The enemy struck with deadly force. She fell, and the world seemed to fall with her. Her body was lost in the chaos, and there was no sign of her ever again. News of her death spread quickly across the kingdom. The people mourned. They wept for their lost princess, the one who had given them hope in the darkest times. They thought they had lost everything. Her father, the king, was crushed by the news. He locked himself in his chambers, unable to face the people. His daughter, the light of his life, was gone. The weight of grief and despair pressed down on him. With no heir left to rule, the king prepared to surrender to the enemy forces. The war was over, and they had lost. The people had no idea that their beloved princess was not dead. They didn't know that she was out there somewhere, fighting to stay alive. The princess woke up in a place she did not recognize. She blinked, trying to make sense of the world around her. She could feel pain in her body, and her head felt heavy. She tried to move, but found herself too weak. The air was cool, and the room smelled unfamiliar, like metal and dust. She was lying on a hard surface, and the light coming from a small window above was dim. Where was she? What had happened? The last thing she remembered was the battle, the sounds of weapons clashing, the screams of soldiers, and the feeling of being struck down. Had she died and gone to some other world? No, she couldn't think that way. She was alive. She had to be. The princess gritted her teeth and pushed herself up, despite the pain. She couldn't stay here. She had to find out where she was and what had happened. As she stood up, her legs wobbled. Her body was weak, but she managed to steady herself. She looked around the room, her eyes scanning the strange surroundings. It didn't look like the castle. In fact, it didn't look like anything she had ever seen before. The walls were made of smooth, shiny metal. There were strange machines in the corners, and the air was filled with the sound of quiet hums. It looked like something from another time, or perhaps another world. The princess felt a shiver run down her spine. She had no idea where she was, or how she had gotten here. Was it the enemy's camp? Was she being held captive? She didn't know. But one thing was certain. She was no longer on the battlefield. She took a few steps, her mind racing. She had to get out of here. She had to find her people and return to her kingdom. She had to save them. Her kingdom was still at war. Her father needed her. The princess could not let her people fall into the hands of the enemy. She could not let her kingdom die. But first, she had to survive. She needed food, water, and most of all, answers. She couldn't face this alone. As she moved through the strange building, she tried to listen for any sounds that might lead her to someone. Anyone who could help her. She needed to know where she was and how to get back to her kingdom. Her heart raced as she turned a corner and came face to face with a man. He was tall and looked nothing like the soldiers of her kingdom. His uniform was different, and he wore strange devices on his arms. The man's eyes widened in shock when he saw her. "You're alive?" he asked, his voice full of disbelief. "But we thought you were dead." The princess stared at him, unsure of what to say. Who was this man? Was he an enemy soldier, or had he somehow saved her life? She felt her guard rise. "Where am I?" she demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. "Who are you? And why am I here?" The man blinked, still shocked, but then he took a step forward, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "I'm not your enemy," he said softly. "I'm the one who found you. You were injured, badly. I saved you." The princess narrowed her eyes, still unsure of whether to trust him. "Why would you save me?" she asked, her voice wary. "You should have let me die with my people." But as they all stood together, a sudden thought struck the princess. They knew the war was being controlled from behind the scenes, but who was in charge? Who was the one pulling the strings? The letter had given them proof, but it hadn't revealed everything. There was still one question that remained. Who was the real enemy? In this part, the princess and Darren make a daring escape from the enemy's clutches. They successfully deliver the evidence to Maya and the group, revealing the true extent of the hidden enemy's power. The tension continues to rise as they realize that the war has been manipulated from the shadows by someone even more dangerous than they imagined. The group now has the key to ending the war, but the question of who is truly behind everything still looms large. The room was silent, the weight of their discovery pressing down on everyone. The princess stood with the letter in her hands, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The hidden enemy had to be stopped, but who were they really? The letter had only mentioned vague instructions and orders. It didn't tell them who was leading this plot, or how to truly end the war. "We have the proof," Maya said, breaking the silence. "Now we need to take it to the world. But we have to be careful. The enemy knows we have the letter, and they won't stop until they get it back." The princess nodded, her mind spinning. She couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. They couldn't waste time. The war was still raging, and people were still suffering. "We have to expose them now," the princess said, her voice firm. "If we wait too long, the enemy might launch another attack. We need to show the world who is really behind this." Darren stepped forward, looking serious. "It won't be easy. We don't know how much power they have or how far their influence reaches, but we can't keep hiding. It's time to take action." The princess looked at the group around her. Each one of them was risking everything to stop the war, to bring peace to the kingdoms. She had never felt more sure of her mission. This was bigger than just her kingdom. It was bigger than any one person. This was about saving everyone. "We move tomorrow," Maya said. "We have contacts in several cities, but we'll need to stay one step ahead of the enemy. We can't afford to be caught." That night, the princess couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the hidden enemy, wondering who was pulling the strings, who could be powerful enough to manipulate entire kingdoms into fighting a war. It felt like a shadow was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. The next day, they set out. The princess traveled with Darren, Maya, and a few others to a nearby city where they would meet with a trusted ally. It was risky, but they couldn't stay in one place for too long. The princess felt her heart racing as they traveled, always looking over her shoulder, always wondering if the enemy was closing in. When they arrived at the city, they met with the ally, a man named Lauren. He was an old friend of Maya's, someone who had helped them gather information. He had a reputation for being well-connected and well-informed, and the princess hoped he could provide them with the final piece of the puzzle. "We need to find out who is truly in charge of the enemy," the princess said as they sat around a table in a small, hidden room. "We have the letter, but it doesn't tell us who we're really up against." Lauren leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "The enemy is smart. They've kept their identities hidden for years. But I've heard whispers. There's a name that keeps coming up, a shadowy figure who's been seen in the highest circles of both your kingdom and the human cities." The princess leaned in, her heart pounding. "Who? Tell me." Lauren hesitated for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. "The name is Lord Asher. He's a powerful figure who has been working behind the scenes for years. He's the one who has been manipulating both sides of the war. He controls the weapons, the armies, and the leaders. But no one knows exactly who he is. Some say he's a noble from your kingdom. Others say he's a member of the council from the human cities." The princess's breath caught in her throat. Lord Asher. She had never heard the name before, but it sent a chill through her. A shadowy figure controlling the war from behind the scenes. It was almost too much to believe.